I wanted to talk a little bit more about markets as well, because the UK has traditionally been a landing point, really for the US. But obviously, a lot has happened, and I think on the last panel that we talked about this, it was the day after Liberation Day. So it was a kind of interesting switch around in some of those questions. What have brands done? What have brands done since then? Because it's such a hit.
Don't we all feel so liberated? It's been wonderful. It's been a real mixed bag, actually. I think, sadly, some brands have just turned off the US. That is the reality. They're just so nervous, or their products are of an origin, from China, where it just literally is not worth shipping. The tariffs grabs all the headlines. The de minimis is what kills the business, and that's been the most, that's been the most damaging thing for our business and therefore our brands. But there are ways around it. And my advice at the time was stand still. But ultimately in business you can't stand still for too long, because otherwise you just, as we were talking about with someone earlier, you just get blown over. So you at the time, day -1, standing still was some good advice. Now it's time to take action and start thinking about what is your strategy for going into the US. Yeah. And the reality is Trump is going to get what he wants in some sense, because some brands are going to the US and setting up distribution there.
The US business is flat so far this year in beauty, and it's really had a massive impact in their trading there. We've kind of survived a little bit better, but it's really hurtful. But I think for some of those indie brands, their e-commerce has been a way of going into those markets without physically landing there and taking on board that additional cost. So James, de minimis, you and I have talked about that.
Don't panic.
Great.
It's the big one. In my mind, it's about changing the mindset. The changes of de minimis, it has created adversity, and adversity creates opportunity. And I really wish brands would start seeing it like that, because the fact is, you might have competitors in the UK who can't deal with this, and you now have an opportunity to get a head start of them. So there have been constant supply chain disruptions, but the reality is it creates huge opportunity for brands that think about it correctly. And the way to think about it is to stop thinking of logistics and global trade and compliance as being a cost center, and see it as being a value generator for your business, a way of getting a head start on your competitors. And I think if brands can invest a little bit of time and change that mindset, then they can really start to see some really good opportunities.
Gilbert, I wanted to talk to you really about that, and looking at your, if you're basically got an e-commerce site, or if you're on social, you're global. So how do you look at paid media across markets when not only is it expensive in your home market, but at least you feel a little bit more confident and you know your customer a bit more, to be able to seed awareness into an international market where the language is the same for the moment in the US? How do you do that smartly? What's the trial and error?
Being intentional, all of that together is America, right? Or the US, in that regard, right? All of them together. It's not the same New York or the East Coast and the West Coast. Very, very different type of people, very, very different ways of shopping, very, very different ways of speaking. If you go to the Midwest, Chicago and all that area, completely different as well. You go Northwest as well. You really have to be intentional, and especially if you're an indie brand, a small brand that you're only you have to go stateside. There is no other way around. You have to go, be in the market, get to know the market. This is probably the easiest time ever for you to launch an e-commerce brand, right? It doesn't take that much money, really. It doesn't take that much money to sell, internationally, especially now with Shopify markets. It's just a couple of clicks and then you're selling elsewhere, right? But you need to be intentional. It can become a distraction. It can really make or break business. You really need to know what you're chasing and what does winning looks like for you. People think that they're gonna go and they're gonna take over the market, and because seriously, right? Again, right? It's sexy. We want to see all those orders coming from all these different countries, but just choose the things that you're gonna do and have the right resources behind it,
I don't know if anybody saw the Wonder Skin social post with the Statue of Liberty putting on the blue lip, which was kind of a brilliant statement of we have landed. But I mean, I'd just like to understand from you what are the challenges have been, and what was your intentional things that you did to make sure that you landed really well up front, and you also, there's tons of stuff that you'd already done up front, isn't there? Tons of awareness you'd already raised.
Absolutely, and starting with choosing your battles. We were lucky with the English language because us, sitting in this room, we can already cross over between U.S., Canada, Australia, Ireland with relative ease, and even appeal to the Nordics. Albeit, I take your point about talking to the heart very, very, very closely. So where we went with the U.S. The U.S. does have a superior advantage to all the other countries we've mentioned. Maybe not politically, but everywhere is a mess now. But because the buying power of the American consumer, there's still nobody comes close to that. Our average basket in the U.S. is probably 35% higher than our average basket anywhere in the world. American people are taught to spend money they don't have from a very early age. People tap into credit cards and they don't spend off of their bank account, whereas anywhere else in the world, people can fundamentally only spend what is available to them. Huge difference. And although that's maybe flawed from a future proofing and behavioral perspective, I'm not the one who's going to change that mindset. This is already ingrained in 3-4 different generations there. So they spend eagerly, they spend more, they buy. People love discovering new products, aka the percentage of indie brand penetration in the U.S. It's no joke. So identifying the market, being absolutely focused on what you want to deliver. We didn't go state specific or city specific, but we did go persona specific. So at some point you run out of the generic influencer, the 20-year-old that looks like a typical makeup, and we go much more deeper into specific personas, age groups, and things that appeal to people. So we market through persona and archetypes rather than geographical ones, and we found that is one way to unlock additional audiences. Things so far as anime and cosplay communities, and then you go into you go into people who are very specific into sports and performance, and people into yoga and athlete, and they care about different visuals, different purposes, and different USPs.
Renee, I wanted to come to you as well because but back to Amazon again in the UK. So getting it right on Amazon in the UK, is that an easy transition to Amazon in the US because that's where the customer is shopping? At the end of the day, it's such an important part of the market and the spend. Or should you be doing more discovery and getting into the brand and the market first and then flip into Amazon in the US? Is it an option to kind of go Amazon, or do you have to learn elsewhere?
Definitely, Amazon would lead you to believe that it's just a click of a few buttons, but of course it's so much more than that. I think operationally, assuming that your kind of supply chain from the UK to the US is in place and your products are compliant and you've done all of that work, operationally it is a click of a few buttons to drop down and open your Seller Central account in the US. So it's not going to be kind of an administrative burden, but from this bigger picture question, it is obviously so much harder. I always say it's very possible, and I've launched many UK brands into the US and varying degrees of success. I think where brands get it wrong is just totally underestimating the size of the investment, the nuance, etc. I would say it's kind of difficult to succeed in the US with Amazon only. As an external brand, but it's equally difficult to succeed in the US without Amazon. But Amazon is really kind of one piece of such a bigger puzzle. Obviously, the US Amazon is a very attractive channel. But if you think that you can spend $2,000 a month and launch a unknown skincare brand into the US market on Amazon, you will be sadly mistaken.
And Victoria, from an investment perspective, how deeply do you need to go into the US to increase your valuation, to increase your likelihood of future investment? how important is the US to your investor perspective?
It's the holy grail, but it's also it's the most competitive and the hardest market to be successful in. Unless you made a 50 million fundraise, then the world is your oyster. But if you're an indie brand, the customer acquisition cost in the US is much higher. The retailers, whatever it's Nordstrom, Ulta, or Sephora, they are very cutthroat, and they don't like to be dictated. So you have to really have, gravitas and presence to be able to succeed there. And we also, the one thing, if you enter the US too early and you're not prepared and you fail, your brand, the ripple effect will happen across the world. So I think, yes, it's important, but there's other ways where you can find growth, not necessarily in the US.
You've got lots of people banging on the door. Is fewer, bigger, better the right way to go, or should you diversify and not be dependent upon a retailer?
I could probably put on like two hats and make great counter arguments for both sides of this. I don't know if there's a right answer. I believe the closer you are to beauty and the closer you are to having a product that needs a little bit of hands-on demonstration and interaction with a sales agent or a specialist, you're probably better off in the specialty beauty environment or the department store environment. The closer you are to having an impulsive, simple, single SKU or easy self-selection type of product, I think not taking advantage of the fact that there is thousands of Target doors, thousands of Walmart doors, thousands of CVS, thousands of Walgreens is also foolish, because the amount of volume you can do there is absolutely asinine, and they're not destructive of one another. I believe it really ties down to your product, to your stage of growth as a business, and to your price point as well, very, very important, and to how the customer needs to interface with it in order to buy it, and then that's what helps you steer the decision.